Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about media representations of our paths and how different things in the media have influenced how we think of our paths. This topic is from me, but it was inspired by a blog that I read called Novice Witch Blog. It's Chloe's blog. The link will be in the description in the topic text, so you can go there. And if you go to the blog and just use the search function to search for Harry Potter, all of the posts where she's mentioned Harry Potter will come up. And I was reading one of those posts. This was months and months ago when it was posted. I was reading this post, and it made me think about different types of characters and different types of media, whether it's TV shows, movies, books, whatever it is, that have influenced the way that we see our paths. Chloe was talking about how Harry Potter and the character Hermione Granger and some other characters in different things that she's seen have influenced the way that she thinks of her path. So I wanted us to talk about that. So that's what we're doing. And for me, so this is specifically things that we've seen that we feel reflect our path in some way. So there might be media that is about a different type of paganism or different branches, different traditions, different types of practitioners of magic that we don't identify with, that we've also seen. But this is talking about the things that we've seen that we feel directly reflect our path or have somehow shaped the way that we see our path and who we are and how we identify. So for me, that's anything that I feel reflects witches, witchcraft, Wicca. I haven't seen anything that's about reclaiming witches, but if I did, it would be that. So anything that I identify with. So for me, thinking about the media that was really influential, because I've seen lots of stuff about witches, right? But there's a few specific things that are things that I watched for years that were pivotal, things that I still love now, and these are the things that I think of. So first is the show Charmed, and everything that was kind of popular around that time that was similar in style, somewhat similar in structure, and had witches in it, right? So there was also Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I didn't actually watch a lot of that back at this time frame when I watched Charmed. I didn't see Buffy until I knew of it, so I kind of had the influence, but not nearly as strong. Also because there's not as many witches in that show, but a few. And Angel, just all of those kind of styles of things with the magic and all the different stuff going on in those. If you've seen my Finding Wicca video on my personal channel, the video from years ago where I was talking about how I kind of originally found out that Wicca was a real thing that people practice and started learning about it, I mentioned that I watched the show Charmed back when I was like 10, 11, and that's one of the first places that I had heard these things being talked about. And so that was a very early on representation. Later on, I got into movies that I still to this day adore, specifically The Craft and Practical Magic. Practical Magic is one of my absolute favorite movies, and I have now also read the book that it was based on. I had seen the movie first years and years ago. I've been watching that for years. Finally just read the book this past year, and yeah, so much good. So those are really the main things that I think of. Now there's also things that were slightly less influential, but still pretty, big in my household. Things like Disney Channel original movies. So I watched the Halloween Town series. There were witches in that. So Marnie and her grandmother, Aggie, were definitely strong representations of witches that I grew up with. So looking at these things in particular, Charmed, The Craft, Practical Magic, and Halloween Town, the thing that really sticks out to me as, what is the word I'm thinking? Not combining, but bringing them to a cohesive whole is a roundabout way of getting where I was trying to say. The thing that I feel brings them together, that they have in common, is that they are all very strong, independent female characters involved in those shows. Most of the witches that you're seeing in those shows, they're all female. So of course that, for me, was a big influence because I do identify as female, and that femaleness was something important to me, seeing women in these roles, and just that very specific style, like I said, with Charmed and Buffy and Angel and everything at that time. There was this very, like, now in my head I think of it as a very 90s style, you know what I mean. Friends also has that kind of style going on, 80s into 90s thing, and so that really influenced a lot of what I thought was cool, you know, and the overall style and character of women that could be their own heroes and save their own lives. And they did have, obviously, a lot of male friends and companions and helpers that were vitally important to what was going on. And it was just the fact that the main people, the witches, really, were mostly female. And along with that, all of those specific examples that I've mentioned involve sisterhood and friendship of some kind, sisterhood. In Charmed and in Practical Magic, they're literally sisters. In Halloween Town, they're a family. In The Craft, they're not actually related to one another, but they do form this very close sisterhood-like relationship. So that's another thing that really sticks out to me when I think of these things that influenced me. And I see that influence now. This is one of those things that maybe now, looking back on it, you see how it's influenced you, even if you've never thought of it before. So now I'm really seeing that. If you do watch my personal channel, CuteWitch772, a little while ago I made some videos about Red Tent and just women in community, talking about how I really, although I have been a solitary practitioner for years and years, and I'm overall pretty much okay with that, as opposed to working solely in a coven. I do some group work, but I also consider myself a solitary because I do my own stuff as well. I have been desiring more of that close female friendship and sisterhood type thing. So yeah, I think that the representations of witches that I grew up with may have had something to do with that, because they were all very much, you know, that was part of what I thought was so cool, was that they had these best friends, and whether that was their sisters or their stepsisters or cousins or whoever, or just people that they met at school, that was something that I thought was part of why it was so cool, that they had those close friends to share it with. And earlier on in my path, I looked for that, and I had a couple of friends who kind of were similar to that, but never really stuck with it the way that I did, and that's always been something. So that's what I've been talking about that a bit on my personal channel. So I think that that could have been influenced by the things that I watched and read. Even though I didn't talk about books as much, it was mostly the movies that I saw in the TV shows. So, yeah. And now, years, later into my path, I'm starting to add on some new media that's also influencing my path. So recently, I have now finished most of what's available at my library of the Fairyland novels by Catherine M. Valente. S.J. Tucker, the pagan singer-songwriter, musician, wrote a whole album of songs called Wonders that are inspired by the first novel in the Fairyland series. The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making is book one, and S.J.'s album is inspired by that. So I have now read that whole series, and that very much, even though there are only a few actual witch characters in it, just that entire world and a lot of the stuff going on and just the magical aspects of everything really influence me now. Just kind of like, I find myself looking more for those little things and connecting more to the realm of fairy, which is something that I've been wanting to do, and that series was a great way to do it. It's in my library, it's under the juvenile fiction section, so that's where you would want to look if you go to your local library, type it in, see if they have it. It's appropriate for kids, but it's a little bit dark and a little bit real too. Like it's pretty awesome. Google it. Look at the website. The website will tell you more. But anyway, so there's that, and also, of course, I've mentioned this on my personal channel too, the book and the movie based on the book of the red tent. Even though that's a biblical story, it also has a lot to do with goddess worship and sisterhood and female magic, basically the divine feminine. Excuse me, I'm tripping over my words here. This is going to be a mobile upload, so it's just going to go all at once. But yeah, so there are new things now that are also coming in and influencing my path and kind of, I would say, adding on to or supplementing the things that I've been wanting in my path. You know, I've been wanting to connect more to the Fae, and so reading the Fairyland novels has been kind of a way to bring that back into my mentality, and I'm seeing influence from that, even though it's it's just a book series. It's just a book series, and that is very cool to me. So take a moment and think about this. If it's not something that you've really thought of before, what were the things that you've seen coming into your path, whether you've just started or you've been on it for a while? What were the things that you've seen that you feel portray who it is that you're trying to be? Whether that is Harry Potter or anything else that I mentioned or any of the other things. You know, there are other things that I watched. There are other Disney Channel movies, like they did a Twitches movie with Tia and Tamara Mowry about the twin witches, and there was something else on the tip of my tongue that I now cannot remember. Oh, True Blood. Of course, I loved True Blood, and in season 4 there was a lot more with the witches and the coven with that. So there are a lot of other things that maybe could have been it if you watched Salem, if you watched this new movie, The Witch. I haven't seen that yet, by the way. But yeah, any of that you feel contributes to your path. And if you're not a witch, if you're some other type of path, what's the media out there that influences how you see your path? You know, does Thor really speak to the Norse practitioners? I've seen a couple of little movies like around the Arthurian legends that mention druids. There was also something on Netflix that I really enjoyed that was about druids. So just anything that speaks to your path, how has that influenced you? And what do you see in those characters that's good? What do you see in them that's bad, that maybe you want to be like, that you don't want to be like? Let's talk about that kind of fun stuff. So that's my video for this week, and you can leave comments as to the kind of things that you've seen and how they make you think about your path. I'll see you next week. And until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.